All right, hey guys. I just kind of wanted to walk you through a few things about how to take your stock and model and actually create a carve from them. All right, so here we are in Fusion 360, and you can see over here in my data panel, I've got a few things here. I've got a file called cam, I've got a file called model, I've got a file here called restroom_pass2.svg, and I have my stock. Right now, I'm just going to open up my stock and my model. We're going to talk about those just real quick. And then this cam file here, I'm actually going to make a new cam file, show you how I put my things together and how we can get a carve started from all that stuff. Okay, so right here, let's go ahead and pop my stock open. Stock is a real simple thing to make. So remember, for this project, I'm going to give you a piece of wood that is 4.5 inches wide by 4.5 inches long by 3/4 inch tall. So that is exactly what you're looking at right here. I know it's not the prettiest, but if I just click on an edge here, and then down here in the right-hand corner, it tells me how long that edge is. So you can see that's 4.5 inches long there. I'll click on this edge, it's 4.5 inches, and it is 0.75 inches tall. So this is our 3D stock. And remember, I changed its appearance by going over here to bodies, right-clicking on the body, and then clicking on appearance. And I set it to something kind of transparent. So we're gonna wanna make sure that our stock is transparent later on, so it's easier to see through, basically. So that's just a real quick introduction to what my stock looks like. Remember, that's the original piece of wood. Let's go ahead and open up my model right here. All right, here is my model for my bathroom pass. Okay, so you can see I've got a few different things here, so I'll just walk you through the timeline of this model just so you can see how I built it. So your model is basically the thing that the CNC is going to carve out. Your model needs to be somehow smaller than your stock. You don't ever really want to have a model that's bigger than your stock. You don't want to tell your machine to carve out something that's bigger than the original piece of wood, right? So we're going to take that original piece of wood, which is our stock, and carve it away until we get our model, okay? So the way that I'm making my model smaller, it's going to be the same length, it's going to be the same width, but it is not going to be as tall as my stock is, and you'll see that in just a second here. So here's the very first thing that I did, going step by step in the timeline, and if I click on that edge, you can see that it's 4.5 inches wide. I'm going to go here, it's 4.5 inches long, or 4.5 inches deep. And then I simply extruded that out. So I created a 3D object, and there is my extruded base. And you can see, if I click on this edge so you can see how tall the extrusion was, it's 0.65 inches. Remember, my stock is 0.75 inches. So we know for sure that my machine is going to go and carve away 1/10 of an inch of my stock. All right, and then here's the next step that I took, okay? And that's adding a sketch, and there's a couple things on that sketch. So thing number one on that sketch, I'll zoom in here, is, and I'll just kind of click there so you can see, is the pictures of the people for the restroom pass or the hall pass, right? So that's that SVG. I just added that SVG here. Now pay attention though, because that SVG lives, in this entire sketch, lives on the top surface of my model. Right? It's real important that we do that. If you put it on the bottom of the model, then the machine's going to carve everything away trying to get down to that stuff, and you won't have anything left, right? And then I also added this text right here to that. It just says hall pass. But something I want to kind of point out is that it's just text, and we're not really going to extrude that, and you'll see that in a minute here. I also added these two holes. That's kind of where we're going to put the string for the restroom pass through. The next step was extruding. And so you can see I took that blue area that I've highlighted right here, and that I extruded it down. So I will end up, everything that's blue right now will be kind of carved away, basically. It is lower than everything else. So my people here, will end up being sticking out of the wood, basically. And then right down here, this blue area, that's going to be also kind of sticking out from the background as well. All right. And then finally, the last extrusion that I have goes and cuts our holes all the way through the model. Okay, so that our string will go all the way through. Okay, so this is what our model and our stock looks like. All right. Now, something to keep in mind, I don't know if when I'm machining all this stuff, if I need to see all of these sketches. It makes sense to keep the sketch right here. Like, again, I want to point out, I did not do any extruding with my text. There's going to be a tool path that basically traces this text out and carves it in. So that's kind of what is going to happen there. All right, so that's not going to carve anything away. Right, so, and I don't know if I want all of these sketches turned on, like that very first sketch. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to hop into my sketch folder. There's the first sketch, it's sketch 1. I'm going to just turn it off with the eyeball there so that I don't really see that. That might get a little too confusing. And then I'm going to make sure that I hit save right here. I'm going to save my restroom pass. And I'm going to look up here at my stock file. And my stock file does not have an asterisk next to it. That's that little star looking thing. That means it doesn't have any changes to be saved, so I don't need to do anything there. Okay, I'm going to go over here now to my data panel. Whoops, sorry, not my data panel. I'm going to go over here to my file option, and I'm going to start a new design. Okay, that brings open this empty tab. Very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to save it. And I'm going to make sure that the location here is the Hall Pass project, because you can see that's one I have open over here in the data panel. And I'm just going to name it, I'll call this one CAM2. I'll save it, and I'll just kind of walk you through step by step how I'm going to get my machine to carve away my stock until the model is left. All right, so here's my CAM2 thing, and you can see it's empty. I need to put both my model and my stock together. So the way I'm going to do that, very first thing I'll do is I'll just bring in my stock here. So I'm going to right click on my stock file, and I'm going to click on Insert into Current Design. And what that's going to do is it's going to put my stock into the CAM2 project, okay? And I don't need to move it around right now, so you can see right here to let you move it around. You can drag it up or down or use one of the free move tools or use one of the rotate tools. Right now I'm just going to click OK. Okay, and so here's my stock. One thing I want to point out to you is right up here, this link, okay? That link means that the stock file is linked to the actual stock file. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to pop back to my original stock, and let me just do something with that. Let me just change that extrusion. So I'm going to right click on my extrude down here in the timeline. I'm going to edit the feature, and I'm going to make it 1 inch tall instead of 3/4 of an inch tall. So you could see that made the stock taller. I'm going to save it, and I know I need to save it because there's a little asterisk up there. Okay, and I'm going to pop back to that CAM2 file. And then, oh yeah, look at that link I was just showing y'all, right? So there is right there a little yellow warning there. That means, hey, the file that this is linked to changed. So if I ever see that, right, I'm going to want to click on the link up here, and that will fix all of the things. And you can see that changed it here. Well, I don't want a 1 inch tall stock because that's not how tall my stock's going to be. So I'll go back to my original stock. I'll right click on my feature here. I'll edit that, and I'll bring that down to 0.75 inches. I will save that again. And then I'll go back to CAM2, and yep, there it is. So I can either click this one up here, or I can right click on my stock component here in the browser, and I can click down here on this little warning that says get the latest version. And you can see there we go, it's back to 0.75 inches. All right, I also need to add my model in here. So I'm going to right click on model, and I'm going to also insert that into current design. And for right now, what I'm going to do, you don't have to, but I just want to show you like a really good practice. I'm just going to scoot this guy out of the way. Okay. So I know that my model is what should be left after the carving, and that my stock is what the wood looks like before it starts carving. So my machine's going to carve away the top of this stock, and the bottom of my stock should be the same as the bottom of my model. Also, I know that my stock and my model are the same length and width. That means that these sides of my stock also need to match up with the sides of my model. So I need to basically stick all of the sides that belong together together. So I use a tool that I here called adjust, right? Sorry, I'm having a bit of a brain moment, guys. Align, sorry, yeah, it's a line right there. I'm going to use this align tool basically to stick edges together, okay? So if you remember, the model file is the one I just scooted out of the way, and that my stock file is perfectly in the middle, right? If I were to go over here and turn the origin on, you could see that the origin is at the bottom and middle of my stock. I'll turn the origin back off, right? So that means I need to make sure that the bottom of my model matches up with the bottom of my stock. So I'm just going to use my view cube here, look at the bottom of everything. I'm going to use modify and align. I'm going to click on the bottom of my my model, and that selects the whole bottom. And I basically need to say, all right, the bottom of this model needs to align with the bottom of my stock. So when I click the bottom of my stock, and I'm going to click that middle point so that the middle of my model ends up in the middle of my stock. Okay, it will show me, okay, we're going to go from the model to the stock. I'll click OK, and oops. What did I do wrong here? All right. We'll figure that out. Oh, yeah, I see what I did wrong. I'm going to go back in there. Here's a learning moment for us, guys. Okay. I don't think I had components selected before. I think I had bodies selected, right? And these two things, if you look up here, you could see that these things are components. I can tell because it's a cube, right? But over here, I think I had bodies. So I'll have to go back and watch a video and make sure what I did, but I need to make sure that I have components selected. So I'm going to say, all right, from the bottom of this component, there we go, it's giving me the middle of that. So I'm just going to go the bottom middle of that one should match the bottom middle of that one. Boom. And let's see, did that end up like I wanted it to? No. Okay, so it didn't end up working. That might happen. I might have clicked on the wrong thing. So if that didn't end up working, what you do is you just click those X's there before you click OK. Make sure that everything's in the right place. Yeah, okay, those bottoms are kind of matching right now. All right, get a nice, good view of the bottoms there. All right, so we'll try it again. We'll go to Modify. Oh, I've already got my Align tool open. All right, so, oh, there it is. Yeah, I had the up here. That's, believe it or not, guys, see how that's kind of selecting that line, that's point is really on the top. Oops. Okay. So there we go. That's the one that's on the bottom. I'll click this guy, and he should line up, or it should line up, sorry, with this point there on the bottom. I'll click it. Boom. There we go. Now, if I look, my model fits perfectly inside of my stock. Okay, and a couple things I want to point out here. I'll just zoom in. You could tell, right, this right here, this line where my mouse is right now, that's the top of the model, and then this line up here is the top of the stock. So you can see it's going to carve away 1/10 of an inch of the stock to get to the surface of the model. It's always good to carve away the top of your stock. That way, you have a nice, perfectly even thickness stock for all the other carves you might need to do. Okay, so I'll click OK. All right. So we got everything lined up just perfectly. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get out of my design view. I'll click on design, and I'm going to go to manufacture because we're going to carve this guy out. All right. Oops, sorry. Click on manufacture. I'll go ahead and get rid of my data panel so I have a little bit more room here. All right. We've got a nice looking hall pass here. Let's get ready to carve it out. So the first thing I want to do is make a setup. All right. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to, you can see that I've got this setups thing right here. A setup is basically how is my machine set up. It tells, this is where we tell Fusion 360 where the origin the machine wants is. This is how we tell Fusion 360, you know, which is the back and forth or X direction, which is the front to back Y direction, and which is the up and down Z direction. So we tell the Fusion 360 like where's my stock and all that kind of stuff. It sets everything up for the carving. So to make a new setup, I go up here to this setup folder. Boom. And what I'm going to do is I like to turn on the stock first. So I'm going to click on the stock tab. That's the kind of yellow cube over there. And you can see right now the mode is relative size. And that's okay to do. Like if you know your stock is, 1 inch bigger in every direction than your model, what you could do is you could say relative size and then just change all of these offsets to 1 inch. But that's not how our stock is going to work. We actually have a solid object model. That's our stock. So we're going to choose that. So I'm going to go to mode, and I'm going to say, hey, our stock is going to be a solid. So from solid. And you can see right here, it wants me to select a solid. And that is over here under models. So I'll pop that down. And you can see I have the CAM12 model open. I'll just drop that guy down so I can see all the stuff inside of it. And there we go. I have a stock component and I have a model component. I can either select right here the stock component, and you can see all the blue stuff is what the stock is. Or I can hit the drop down. If I really wanted to, I could turn that off and then choose the stock body, right? Either way works, okay? Then I'm gonna click over here on the rest of my setup stuff after I get my stock all set up. Now we need to tell Fusion 360 which way is left and right, which way is up and down, which way is back and forth, and all that stuff for our machine. So you can see right here, I see my X, Y, and Z axis. Now, this is what right now Fusion 360 thinks X, Y, and Z is. All right, so we need to change its mind there, okay? So in order to change Fusion 360's mind, let's go and look over here. So our machine, we don't need to select a machine. Our setup should be default by milling. That's good, we want a milling setup. Orientation is what we need to change. So I'm gonna click on that. Right now, model orientation is selected. That means the X, Y, and Z you see on the screen there by the words hall pass, that's X, Y, and Z from my model file, which is not really what X, Y, and Z is for my machine. So we're gonna get rid of this model orientation, and we're gonna choose, you can choose Z-axis, X-axis, or you can choose Z-axis, Y-axis, or you could choose Y-axis, X. You could choose any one of these three. It's kind of up to you. I'll choose X-axis, Y-axis. That's a lot of times what I like to do. And now I need to teach Fusion 360, right? Where is my X-axis on the machine? So when I place this model on, or this stock onto the machine, basically I want the left and right to be the left and right like it is right now on my screen, and front to back to be front to back like it is on my screen, and all that stuff. So over here, you can see it's asking me to select, well, what is your real X-axis? And so I just need to click on any line that goes left and right. So this line goes left and right, and you can see my X-axis is already going that direction, so it's not gonna change anything right now. Boom. You can see it kind of scoots it back here, but it's still going left and right in that direction. And it wants me now to select the Y-axis. That's the one that goes front to back. So again, I need to find any line that goes front to back. So I could choose, for example, like this line right here. Boom. All right, so let's kind of have a look and see what we have here. X is going left to right in the appropriate direction, and Y is going front to back in the appropriate direction. But I have a problem with my Z-axis. It's pointing down. Z needs to point up, okay? So I need to play around with some of this stuff over here. I got the ability to flip the X-axis or flip the Y-axis until until everything's pointing the right direction. So I flipped the X-axis, and you can see now X is going left to right, Y is going front to back, and Z is pointing up, okay? If I flip the Y-axis here, now you can see it's back to being wrong. So yeah, this is how I want it. So some other things that we need to know about is our origin. If you remember in math class, you got your 4 quadrants in a graph, 1, 2, 3, 4. One is in the upper right-hand corner. We want to pretend that this model and everything is quadrant 1. Okay, so that would mean that this corner right down here where my mouse is right now, that should be the origin or the 0, 0 of all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, let's make sure it says stock box point. We're going to say, all right, what point on the stock is my machine going to start everything from? And so I'll go down here and I'll click this, and this says, oh, okay, you can see now it wants me to select a point. And you can see over here I have 3 points. I don't want to start carving from the bottom. I want to start carving from the top, so I'm going to start right there. That's my starting point or my origin, boom. And you can see it brings my X, Y, and Z axis indicators over there. And the other thing we want to make sure that we have selected is our model. So what's the thing that we're carving out? So I'm going to click on that and go back over here again. I still have all my models open. Now, instead of like my stock, I want to get my model selected. So again, I can either select my model component, or I can open that up and select my model body. Okay, either one of those works. I've got the body selected right now. Fixture you can ignore. That's like if you have a special kind of clamp that's holding the stuff down, you would turn that on. We can ignore that right now. We're going to click OK. So now we have basically said, hey, this is where all the stuff on our machine is. And to that setup, we can start adding some stuff. So kind of like we've talked about in class, we usually want to go from big tools to small tools. So the tool library that I've shared with you that you should have uploaded by this point, that tool library basically has 2 sizes of tools. It has one with 1/8 of an inch wide, and then one that comes to a teeny, 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 teeny point. So the 1/8 of an inch wide tools are the ones that we're going to want to use. So I like to name my setups so I know what tools belong in those setups. So what I'm going to do is just click very slowly on the setup folder twice. I'm going to call this one 1/8 of an inch tool. Okay, just so I remember that this is for all the 1/8 of an inch tool stuff. Now I need to say, okay, what kind of tool path am I going to use to carve away all my stuff? And you can see up at the top here, I got lots of different kinds of tool paths. I've got 2-dimensional tool paths. That's all of these guys right here. And 2-dimensional tool paths, they are basically designed to follow like flat lines. But if I look over here, I got some stuff sticking out. That's 3-dimensional. So I know I need to be in these 3-dimensional tool paths. All right, and a really good one to get everybody started with is this one right here. It's adaptive clearing. So I'm going to choose that. And you can see that brings in my adaptive clearing menu. Okay, so some things that I want to do. The very first thing I want to do is get in here and select my tool. So I'll click Select Tool. And remember, the tools that I've shared with you are right here in your cloud library, and I think for me it's called Xcarve Simplified. I think it's just called Xcarve Tools for you guys. And there's our 3 tools. I've got this 1/8 inch ball end tool. I've got a 1/8 inch flat end, and then I've got a V-carve. So the one that's going to take away the most material at a time is this flat one, so I'm going to choose that. So I'll just double click on that guy, and then boom. Now you can see that as some stuff is set up here. I think by default I have it set up for you so that its spindle speed is moving at 16,000 RPM. So if yours does not say 16,000 RPM, you'll need to change it to 16,000 RPM. And then the other one that you'll need to double check to make sure is correct is your cutting feed rate. Right now that's at 48 inches per minute. If yours doesn't say 48 inches per minute on cutting feed rate, make sure to change that, okay? Everything else just kind of automatically adjusts itself based on these two settings. So we're not going to right now worry too much about that. Not for our first carve at least, okay? And then I'm going to pop over here to geometry. Here's a real important one. This is basically, we're showing the machine, in this tool path, what do I want to carve away? All right? So I know that I want to carve away kind of all the stuff here. You know, I want it to carve away the top of the stock so that it goes down to the top of the model right there. And I want it to carve away kind of all my background stuff. Okay, so that's what all this machine boundary stuff is. So I'm going to say, all right, when I say what is my machine boundary, I'm basically saying, all right, I don't want my tool to go over this line ever. So for this one, I'll just go selection. Okay. And we basically need to say, show the machine where the out of bounds line is, like if this is a football field or something. Okay, so, and you can see right here that yellow line, right? That's at the very, that's kind of represents the perimeter of my stock. I'm going to select that, and that's like, all right, okay, machine, don't go over that line, okay, unless we tell it to go over that line. And we could do that right here. So we got this tool containment option, right? And that says, okay, how far outside of bounds do you want your tool to go? Well, you know, let's actually do this. Let's let our tool go a little bit out of bounds so that we're sure that it carves all the edge stuff. So we're going to add an additional offset here of 0.1 inches. Okay? And the stock contours, that basically says, all right, do we want to like use, if I turn it off, that basically tells Fusion 360, hey, we're going to carve based on where the stock is originally. And for this one, I'm not trying to contain my carve to any kind of special area. I want it to carve away the entire top of the stock, so I'm going to turn off stock contours. And for almost all this stuff in here, if you hover your mouse over it, it will give you an explanation of what it's doing, right? So you could stop and kind of read. So if stock contours is disabled, like I've just done, it says the perimeter of the stock as defined in the setup is used. So, right, it knows that the stock that we have in the setup is the stock that the machine is going to obey, basically. And if I enable it or put the little check mark back, that means the selected faces or edges are projected onto the model top. So that basically means like, hey, you know, for this part of the carve, machine, I want you to think that this is the stock. So for the stuff that we do at the beginning, it's a good idea to usually keep stock contours turned off for simple carves, getting you guys started here. Okay, rest machining. Yeah, we're going to want to make sure that rest machining is turned on. What rest machining does is it looks back in the carving history and it says, okay, what has already been carved away so I don't like recarve it, because that's a big time waste. So we're going to make sure our rest machining is turned on, and our source is from the setup. All right, so it's going to basically find the stock in the setup and say, okay, this is the stuff as it looks like at the beginning. And you could leave the adjustment and the offset alone for right now. Okay, and then heights, if I go there, you can see these are basically the 4 different zones that the machine will carve down to. So you can see right now my machine, this blue line represents the bottom height, and that is set to the model bottom. That means if I have anything carved away in my model, like any holes in my model that go all the way to the bottom, it will carve those holes all the way to the bottom. And if you remember, I do have holes that go all the way through my model for my string. So for mine, right, I want to keep my model, my bottom height set right there to the bottom of the model, okay? And then the top height, so that is basically like where's the very top of my carving, right? So it says, hey machine, I want you to start carving at this top height. And right now it's set to stock top. And that's absolutely correct, right? I want to start carving at the top of my stock. The retract height and the clearance height, those basically tell your machines, okay, the machine is going to pull up the tool so it can move around. How far do I want it to pull up? So you could leave those at their default settings right now, okay? And then passes. Here's where we get into some very kind of tricky stuff here, because the passes are those step downs and step overs that we've been talking about in class, okay? And that basically says, okay, how much of my tool should be touching the wood, right? So it says how much of the diameter or the round part of the tool should be touching the wood, and how much of the shank or the long part of the tool should also be touching the wood. A good rule of thumb that we're going to want to use is both our step over and our step down want to be about 1/2 of the diameter of whatever tool that we're using. So if you remember, the tool that we're using is 1/8 inch in diameter. So half of that is 1/16. Okay, so I'm going to open up my calculator over here, okay, and I'm just going to find out what 1/16 is by going 1 divided by 16, and that's 0.0625. So I'm going to let both of these numbers be about 0.0625. So the step over, or how much of the round part of the tool is carving, is this guy right here, optimal load. And you can see right now this guy is set up to 0.05, which is pretty close, but I want to change that to 0.0625, okay? And then the step down, and that basically says, okay, how far down into the wood am I going to drop my tool? Right, that should also be about 0.0625, and you can see there are two step down numbers. There's the maximum roughing step down and then the fine step down. The one we care the most about is this roughing one, okay? So you could see it is way big right now, 0.3937, okay? So I'm going to change that guy to 0.0625. Now, my fine step down, by that basically means, okay, in those really detailed areas, your machine will go and do the roughing step down first. It will go down each layer 0.0625 inches. But then if it needs to go back and add little details, right, how much detail should it give? So you can see right now this is 0.00625. That's a real fine detail. So what I typically like to do is keep my fine step down about half of my maximum step down. And my maximum is about 0.06, so I'll change this to about 0.03. And that's going to save me quite a bit of time, actually. Okay, stock to leave, right? If I'm going to go back and do some cleanup stuff, I want to leave just a little bit of stock there. But this is probably, like, this carve is going to carve out all the background by the guys. It's going to carve out the holes. So I don't really want to leave anything left. I don't want too many operations here. So I'm going to turn off stock to leave. And the linking tab right over here, I'm just going to leave everything alone right there right now. For this very first carve, like, all that stuff is going to work for us, okay? So I'm going to go and click OK. And then my computer is going to think here. Fusion 360 right now is calculating that tool path. It's basically figuring out, okay, what path should you follow, Mr. Cutter, so that you can cut away all that stuff. And you can see that's what all those blue lines are. And that's going to carve out everything here except my text. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But I want to make sure that nothing bad happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on my toolpath, and I'm going to click over here to simulate. And what that does is kind of cool. It lets you watch. It basically pretends to be your machine and shows you what it's going to look like carving away all this stuff, okay? I always turn, sometimes the toolpath is weird. I don't like looking at my toolpaths. You can keep it on. Stock, I keep that on. You know, you could play around with all this stuff over here to get different colors of stuff. I'll keep mine set to colorization. We'll do for operation for me, right? Material, wall paint, I like to use ceramic usually. Yeah, you can play around with all this stuff. What you don't want to skip, and I hope like you're hearing that, is clicking this info tab and then going down here. This is going to tell you all the stuff about what's going on. One thing we want to really look out for under this info tab is collisions. That means are parts of your machine colliding with your stock, which is bad. The only thing we want touching the stock is the tool. We don't want anything else on our machine colliding with that. So we want to make sure that there are no collisions here. And look at that, I have no collisions, so I'm doing pretty good. So I'll go back to display. And if I want to watch it carve, I can click the play button. And you could see, boy, it's carving fast. If I wanted to slow down, I got this little speed slider right here. Okay. Typically, though, I like to watch it kind of go fast just to make sure that yeah, and you can see it start to carve away our people there. Boom. Okay, and then you can see down here, it got to the end, this little time marker. This at the very bottom of your screen is like, if you want to click around, you can see different parts of the timeline. Now, it might take your computer a second or two to, like, you can see mine is red, because it needs to, like, think about it, basically. Oh, yeah, see, it's still thinking. All right, and it's almost all the way, and I can hit play, and it'll finish up that carve. Okay, so let's go ahead and just kind of check out, do I like what was carved out here? Yeah, I generally do like that, okay? Now, here's the thing, though. I can't see the people's hands and all that stuff because my tool, that 1/8 inch tool, was too thick to get down in there, okay? So I'm gonna have to do something a little bit different for that, but I'll show you what I'm gonna do for that. Okay, I'm gonna click close here, get out of my simulation, and then if I click away, you can see I can turn on and off my tool path. If I click on the tool path, it shows me all the paths. So I'm gonna click away so I kind of have an idea what's going on here. Okay, so like right here in the arm area and everything, and right here, like, it didn't carve that stuff away because the tool that I'm using is too thick to get in there, okay? But I still want those lines to show up. So we're gonna switch to a different tool. And here's how I always do that, okay? I'm gonna, in that tool library I shared with you guys, I have a V-bit, which is a very pointy one. So I don't want to have to make a whole new setup and go through that whole process of setting up the origin and setting up the XYZ axis and setting up where the stock is. So Fusion 360 has made that really nice for us. I can just right click on my setup if I'm going to switch tools, which I am, and I am going to click on duplicate, and then boom, I have a duplicate of my first one. And you can see it duplicates everything in the setup. I don't need this adaptive path again, so I'm going to click on that adaptive path. I'm gonna right click on it and let's just yeet that guy away with delete. Yeet and delete, all right. Boy, I'm sorry I said that out loud. Okay, so I got rid of that toolpath because that's not the toolpath we're gonna use for this setup. Also, this setup is not for a 1/8 inch tool. Remember, I'm gonna switch to my really pointy one. So I'm just gonna click on that twice slowly and I'll just call it the V tool. Now I need to give the V tool a toolpath or two. So let's talk about carving out these letters first. There is a toolpath specifically for carving out letters, and because those are nice and flat and they don't need to go up and down or much, that's a 2-dimensional toolpath. So I'm going to go here to 2D and I am going to choose engrave because that is exactly what this is meant for. All right, so and my tool, I'm going to select here for my tool library. I'm going to go back into my cloud one, which is Xcarve Simplified. And here's my V one. I'm going to double click that. All right, there we go. Now I basically need to just check some stuff out here. I need to make sure my spindle is 16,000 and my cutting feed rate's about 43, right? I think by default yours should be there. So these are the settings that we want to use. Remember, if we change these two, all the rest will adjust automatically, okay? And so I'm going to click on geometry. This is basically saying, okay, what do I want to engrave? All right, and that's these letters. So I'm going to click on the engrave. And you can see all my letters there kind of light up. Heights and all this stuff, we could kind of just use the default settings for that stuff. We'll click OK. And then it makes a toolpath for us. And just like last time, oh, look at that toolpath. It's in the wrong folder. Let's go ahead and scoot it. Do you see how I put that in the wrong folder? Tricky, tricky. Okay, so what I could do is I can click and drag on that toolpath and put it in the right folder. And then, uh-oh, I get this big red exclamation point. That means, oh no, like we don't know what that toolpath is. So I'm gonna, oh yeah, before I do this, one thing I also wanna show you is if I right click on my V tool setup, remember this is the one I duplicated. I'm gonna edit that. Something real important here is I need to go to stock and I need to say, all right, what mode am I using? I want to make sure that I have from preceding setup. That, and I'll click OK. And what that is basically going to do is all of my tool paths in this setup will know what has already been carved away. So again, we don't want to like recarve anything, okay? So now let's talk about that big red exclamation point. That's because I moved it from one setup to another. I can right click on that guy and I can go to generate, and that basically says, okay, apply all those rules that we made for this toolpath here. And you can see this looks different because it now knows the right tool to use and everything, okay? And just like we did last time, I'm gonna right click on that guy and I am gonna simulate. Okay, I'll click play. Oh, but something I'm not so fond of. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That kind of carved like super deep and it missed the H right here. I'm gonna go up here, I'm gonna turn this off. So I'm going to turn off all my model stuff from the models. I can even do that up here. Boy, that doesn't look too pretty, does it? Okay, so I can kind of fix that. I got some options to fix that up. Okay, so I'll turn that back on there. So one option that I have to fix that up is let's go and right click on this engrave toolpath. Actually, before I do that, the crossbar and the H, it's not going to carve because it's so skinny. So I need to use a different kind of font here. And that basically means, well, if you don't know what a font is, that's like, what do the letters look like? So remember that this does not actually live in my CAM file. I'm going to close this out. All this lives in the model file. So I'm going to go back to my model file, and I'm going to right-click and edit on the sketch where my words are. And I'm going to change the font for those words. So I'm going to right-click on any of my words, or double-click on any of my words, sorry, and then you can see it lets me change some stuff here. So here's my font, and it looks like Didot right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a font that looks more like it's drawn with a nice thick marker. So that Chalk Duster looks kind of neat, so I'll click on that. I'll click on OK, and there we go. Yeah, I like. Oh, I can't. Oh, well, all that fuzzy stuff. The VBit's going to try to do that. I don't think that's going to work. So I'll double click that. Switch it from Chalk Duster to something. Oh, what was that? Chalk, not Chalk Duster. There's something. Holy cow, I got a lot of fonts on here. I had Chalkboard. I have Chalkboard and Chalkboard SE. I'll try this SE one. It looks a little thicker. Click OK. There we go. Oh, yeah. I think that might be pretty neat. Okay, so I'll finish the sketch. And remember, I'm changing the model file, and it has a little asterisk here saying, hey, you need to save some changes. So I'll do that. I'll save my changes. I'll pop back over here to my CAM, and then, uh-oh, I see everywhere you've got changes to make. This is probably going to screw up all my tool paths. So let's see here. I'll click on that, fix all of my changes. I'm going to update everything. I'll click close, and you can see my text changed down here. And yep, sure enough, my engrave toolpath did not like that. So I'm going to right-click on my engrave toolpath and generate that again. All right. And then I'm going to turn off my models again so I can see what this looks like. All right, that looks a little better, maybe. Do I like that? Let's go from a top-down view, and yeah, I think overall I like that. So yeah, that's going to look pretty cool, I think. Let's see here. Do I like these A's? I don't know. Oh yeah, I like the A. I could see. Okay, yeah, I could see the bottom there. Yeah, that's gonna be pretty neat, I think. Okay, so I've got that engrave done. I'll turn my model back on up here. But remember, there's still like the area under the arms and everything of the people here that it didn't carve out up here, right? It didn't carve it there. So what I need to do is I'm going to use my pointy V-bit to kind of trace that stuff out. Okay, so I will go up here. Now instead of doing an engrave, I want that V-bit basically to follow these lines right here. Okay, so that's 2D. Those are 2D lines. And I hope you caught it. I'm going to try this trace one right here because that's what it does. It traces lines. Okay. Again, I'm going to make sure I have the right tool selected. Go up here, Xcarve, V-end. Okay. 16,000 is good. 43 is good. Geometry. Okay. What do I want this V-bit to follow? I want it to follow. Well, I'm going to click on this. That's where one of the problems are. And then the problems are also in these legs and down here. So it's okay. So this is going to kind of trace around all those lines for us. And what the heck? Well, let's have it trace around the head too. Because this is a V-bit, what this is going to do is even if it follows an edge that you've already cut out, it's going to kind of put an angle on that edge, what we call a bevel, right? And then heights, let's see what those heights look like for this trace. Yeah, there we got some interesting stuff there. So feed height. Okay, well, we'll leave that alone. I'm not sure if that's going to work like I want it to yet. Okay, I've got geometries, heights. Chamfer, I'm going to turn off this chamfer setting, okay? And we could leave all this stuff alone. For these 2D toolpaths with a V-bit, you don't really have to worry so much about step down, step over. I think this isn't going to work. That's my prediction. Let's click OK and see if that's true. Oh, interesting. Well, we know it's not going to do that because that. Oh, look at both of these. Interesting. Okay, both hall pass and this trace. Do you notice that? Maybe I'm wrong here. Both of those are carving from the top of the stock. But remember, the top of the stock should be gone, right? We carved away the top of the stock right here. So I forgot rest machining, didn't I? So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to make sure I'm going to edit that. I'm going to make sure that continue rest machining. Look at that. I forgot to turn that on. Silly me. So yeah, it's from preceding setup, and I'm going to click that. I'm going to click OK. And then you could see, hey, both of these are wrong now because we're not trying to carve the top of the stock. We're trying to carve from the top of the model. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I can either generate both of those, or I can right click on the V-bit setup and I can click generate right there, or I can hit Control G and that will regenerate everything here. Let's see if that puts that in all the right places. Look at that. Yeah, now my hall pass is carved in the right place, and now this is all carved out in the right place. So both of these tool paths use the same tool. That means they're going to kind of happen at the same time. So now, because I have two tool paths in this setup, I'm going to right click on the setup and I'm going to simulate this whole setup for that. And first place I always go is over here to collisions. And nope, there are no collisions. I like that. Go back here to display. Let's watch it carve out all this stuff. So you could go away, toolpath stuff. And I'm going to turn off my models just so I can see what it looks like. Now you can see, yeah, now it knows what was carved out previously. Okay, there we go. I'll click play. Boom, 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 boom. So do I like that? I don't know if I like how deep those traces went. Maybe I do. Oh yeah. I think that'll actually end up looking pretty neat. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and what I could even end up doing is just kind of like taking a marker over all that stuff it traces out. And here, sorry. Okay, let's bring all that back. And now I might want to play around with, we'll just go stock material. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of what it's gonna look like, right? There might be some other things that I could do to make it look better, but for your very first carve, I think this is gonna look kind of pretty neat there. Okay, so this is how it all ends up. So I'm gonna go ahead and click close. And then the only other step that we have left, the step that I'm gonna show you next week, is how to actually get this on the machine. All right, thanks for watching, guys.